I'm talking to this guy, and he's been a follower of Jesus for 40 years. He works in the healthcare business. He's actually in outside sales of PPE. Now, guys, can you imagine that being a growth industry over the last few years? Possibly. Were there possibly a few face shields that were sold? And so every single one of those things that he sold to a hospital, he's supposed to be getting a little bit of commission on, right? Except the people from his work said, oh no, this was an act of God. And so therefore, your commission structure as it's written right now, that doesn't apply. Yeah, oh my. Yeah. Have you ever been done like that in work? Has anything ever happened like that to you in the workplace? Yeah, if they've ever changed I used to sell glasses for a living. If they ever change your commission structure, guess what? That really messes with what you're able to do as far as paying your bills. Being faithful to the mortgage that you told the lending company that you would be faithful to. Okay, so this is real world stuff. Do you get that? Then you get this text. Okay, this is Jacob's life. This is what's going on in Jacob's life right now. Now, let's dive into this text, and we're going to, in chapter 30, we're going to be looking at how God protects Jacob from Laban's greed. And then in chapter 31, he's going to protect him from Laban's wrath. Those are the two big subdivisions of this text. I'm not going to read the entire thing all at once. I'll talk. I'll read, talk a little, read, talk a little. You'll get the idea. But let's go to chapter 30, starting at verse 25, and let's read through verse 34. Here is where Laban uses Jacob, just like that guy got used by the company that he works for. As soon as Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away that I may go to my own home and country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, that I may go, for you know the service that I have given you." But Laban said to him, "If I have found favor in your sight, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages and I will give it." Jacob said to him, "You yourself know how I have served you, and how your livestock has fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now, when shall I provide for my own household also?" Have you ever asked that question at work? Okay, yeah. He said, "What shall I give you?" Jacob said, "You shall not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again pasture your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb, and the spotted and the speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages." In other words, this is ancient prophet sharing, guys. That's what this is. "So my honesty will answer for me later, when you come to look into my wages with you. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted stolen." Laban said, "Good. Let it be as you have said." So, in this story, Jacob's ready to cut his losses. He's already been enduring a lot of bad stuff with Laban. Laban is an absolute cheat who is making Jacob, who is also known as a cheat, he's been going to grad school. Okay, he's been learning, this is how you're really supposed to cheat. This is how you're really supposed to swindle people. You want to learn? Here, I'll take you to school, son-in-law. and the thing is, this is how he treats his relatives. This is how Laban treats his relatives. Now, if you don't know, when Jacob first arrived in this part of the world called Paddan Aram, as he arrives there, he has nothing. And he sees Laban's youngest daughter, Rachel. He says, she's good looking. I want to marry her. I don't have any money, so I will work in order to gain her hand in marriage. We'll talk about that. It's called a bridal price. It's tradition. It's really the Middle East's way, not of buying a woman, but of purchasing security for her. It's like setting up a 401k for your sweetie. Okay, that's what you're really doing in that world. Now, that's important because it's going to come to play here in this passage. But the way that the amount of money that you would have to pay would be, let's say that it's $10, or say $10,000. Jacob paid $25,000. He paid that much money in order to set up Rachel. And then it's time for the wedding, and what happens? Oh, it's Leah, that passage. And then what? Laban says, tell you what, I've got a deal for you. You work for me for another 7 years, give me another $25,000, and you can have the one that you really wanted in the first place. So he's paying 2.5 times the market value for a wife to set her up, and he does it twice. This is what Laban does. So whenever you hear Laban saying, hey, let's work a deal, just step back for a second, because he is a harsh negotiator. He will always find a way to, let's say, do you wrong. And so that's what we see here, is that he's not setting up Jacob to where Jacob can provide the money that's necessary to raise the children that Laban's daughters have birthed. Okay, so he's not just being bad to Jacob, he's being bad to his own daughters and to the servants of his daughters. He's just a bad person all around. You do not want to be like Laban. He's a cheat to the very end. And so Jacob sets up this situation. He says, we're going to come up with a color coding system. See, all the sheep that are white, they'll be yours. And by the way, Laban means white in Aramaic. So it's kind of like a color coding system. And all the ones that are striped and speckled and, black lambs, all the ones that don't match you, they'll be mine. And so what does Laban do? Well, let's look at verses 35 through 43. We'll just see exactly how does Laban cheat Jacob, and how does Jacob respond. But the day Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted. Wait, he just said that's a good idea. He's already cheating. I mean, it's just one sentence over. Good, let it be as you have said. But that day, Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white in it, and every lamb that was black, didn't matter what color they were, and put them in charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flock. In other words, is Jacob going to know that Laban has cheated, since there's a 3-day distance between them? He's not even going to know. So he's going to do this covertly. Verse 37 rather. Then Jacob took fresh sticks. This is the weirdness. Then Jacob took fresh sticks of poplar and almond and plane trees and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the sticks. He set the sticks that he had peeled in front of flocks in the troughs, that is, the watering places where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the sticks, and so the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. Well, that's weird. I thought they'd been removed. That's the point. Verse 40, and Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the striped and all the black of the flock of Laban. He put his own droves apart and did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob would lay the sticks in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, that they might breed among the sticks. But for the feebler of the flock, he would not lay them there. So the feebler would be Laban's and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man increased greatly and had large flocks, female servants and male servants, and camels and donkeys. What in the world are you talking about, Bill? Well, I'm almost as lost as you are, except I'm 5 days less lost than you. Okay, but here's the deal, because suburban kid. Okay, this is not my world. Okay, this is not what I know. But what I do know is verse 43, thus the man increased greatly. What is God doing in this? God is protecting Jacob from Laban's greediness. That's what he's doing here. This is all a book about, this is all a passage about God's protection. First, we see that Laban uses Jacob, then Laban cheats Jacob here, but God protects him anyway. Now, why is he taking, all this, why is he taking, these poles and whittling off the white stripes? Allegedly, the thinking was that whatever the animals were looking at while they were mating, that's what they're going to look like coming out. Okay, so they were wrong. So that means that the science of their day was wrong. Have we ever seen science books be wrong? Spontaneous generation, yes. Yes, we've seen that. We've seen science books have to recalibrate their expectations and learn about things like Punnett squares and all those kinds of things that we learned after Gregor Mendel, right? So they weren't right, but God was. God was right. God knew everything that was going on. In fact, he decreed, I am going to protect you, Jacob, from your absolutely horrible father-in-law. I am going to protect you. And that is the point of this. But why did it work? We'll get to that in chapter 31. In fact, let's go there, because here we're going to see, I want you to check this, but it seems to me that what this passage really is, it's almost a reflection of the Exodus for the people of God, because they were constantly being swindled, constantly having the idea changed. I mean, you're supposed to make these bricks. Oh, well, make them without straw now. It's that kind of idea. Here we go, your life is not already hard enough for you. Let's make it more difficult. And so God prospers the people of Israel. They grow in number. Does that make the Egyptians say, maybe they're more useful. Maybe we'll like them. Maybe we'll put them up into the next rank of oppressed peoples in our country? No, that's not what happened. What happened was they pressed down on them harder. And that's the reaction that we see here in this text of Laban towards Jacob. So if you're an Israelite who's hearing this for the first time, Moses is saying, hey guys, this isn't anything new that you've been experiencing. This oppression that you've known, this is what your father Jacob experienced. And so now it's time to get out of town, right? Because we just got to get out while we can. So look at verse 1. We're going to read the first 21 verses in chapter 31. And this is the part where God protects Jacob from Laban's wrath. And this is where Laban pursues Jacob. Do you guys remember a place in the Bible, say in Exodus chapter 14, where some Egyptians pursued the Israelites? Do you remember that passage? Red Sea kind of area? Well, you can go back to that. But let's go to chapter 1, verse 1 of chapter 31 here. Now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from what was our father's he has gained all his wealth. And Jacob Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. That's because Jacob's winning. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you. If you want, you can underline that. That's a big place where God tells Jacob to do something, and so he's going to do it. Verse 4. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was, and he said to them, I see that your father does not regard me with favor as he did before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. Note that, 10 times. Think about the number 10 and what that might mean within an Exodus context. 10 plagues, guys? Okay, just putting that out there for you. Check that. I might be wrong about this. That is me interpreting, but I think it's a good interpretation. We're back in verse 7. Yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. If he said, the spotted shall be your wages, then the flock bore spotted. And if he said, the striped shall be your wages, then all the flock bore striped. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. Underline that. In the breeding season of the flock, I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats that mated with the flock were striped, spotted, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob. And I said, here I am. And he said, lift up your eyes and see all the goats that mate with the flock are striped, spotted, and mottled, for I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now arise, go from this land and return to the land of your kindred. And Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and he has indeed devoured our money. What does that mean? That means the 401k, we're talking about the bridal price, they never got it. See, Laban doesn't merely cheat Jacob. He cheats his own daughters. He's a bad person. Okay, I want you to understand you're not supposed to like Laban. Moses does not want you to like Laban. God does not want you to, he wants you to love Laban because you're supposed to love everybody, but you're not supposed to like him, especially as within a text, within a literary context. Verse 16. All the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do. So Jacob arose and set his sons and his wives on camels. He drove away all his livestock, all his property that he had gained, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Paddan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. And Jacob tricked Laban the Aramean by not telling him that he intended to flee. He fled with all that he had and arose and crossed the Euphrates and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. So what's going on here? Well, lots of stuff is going on. Verse 3. God just comes to him straight up and says, in a dream, he says, get out of here. You got to go. And when God tells you to do something, you do it. I don't think I have to explain that too much. But this is very much like what we read in the Exodus. And the wages, they've been changed 10 times. Just like Pharaoh changed his mind about whether he was going to let the people of Israel go 10 times, right? That's why you have 10 different plagues. Because God is saying, uncle, uncle, uncle. Are you going to say uncle? Well, here we see that his that his uncle will say uncle eventually. So why did Jacob's flocks grow? That was the question I asked just a few minutes ago. Verse 9. What's going on here? Justice is what's going on here. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. Why? He is a God of justice. He is a God who does right. And then he explains that in verses 10 through 13. That's the second reason, that God commanded Jacob in a dream to do what he did about the mating rituals, and he did it. He followed that. Although I will say, he did add the branch part. That was something he added. That wasn't in the command. Fair enough, though. I mean, if you have a 401k, where can you find it in the scriptures that says you're supposed to have a 401k? Not necessarily there, but you can find the principle in the Proverbs that you are supposed to be wise in the way that you use your money. So, and you can also find it in Ephesians chapter 4 that those of us who have surplus are supposed to give of our surplus to other people who are in need. So you can find the principles, but I'm just saying there are things that we do, even in a worship service, you won't be able to find a guitar in there. Guys, this is where grace comes in, and this is also where we say contextually what we're doing on a guitar is similar to what would have been done on a lyre in ancient Israel. So just giving you a little bit behind the scenes of why we do what we do. So what's going on with Rachel and Leah? Rachel and Leah, do they ever agree on anything? If you were here last week, you'd say no. They actually hate each other. It's Jacob who hates Leah, but Leah is not crazy about Rachel. And so they're agreeing on something. They're saying, God is judging Dad. We're on Team Jacob. That's what they're saying. And you also see a scene here of unity within what is going to become the nation of Israel, where you have everyone on the same page. And if you're an Israelite, you should be thinking to yourself, maybe we should follow the example of Jacob and Leah and Rachel. When they fled, they did so, and they entered into the land of Canaan with a sense of unity and purpose. This is where we're going, and the reason we're going there is because God has instructed us to do so. So that is what is being said to the original readers, or the original hearers, more likely, of this text. And then Rachel, she steals the household gods. And this is hilarious on several layers. But we're going to see why it's funny. Well, for starters, if they're gods, I mean, what kind of a god can be moved by someone else without their will? Let's just the most basic idea. So how is Laban going to respond to all of this? To them running and just fleeing from Laban as fast as they can. Remember, they have livestock, they have little kiddos, they have all that stuff. Is that kind of thing ever fast? For those of you who have kids, is going anywhere fast and easy? No. If you ever have kids, there's these things called pack and plays. They're these things that are meant to slow you down immensely. But the point here in verses 22 through 55, and we're going to skip a few verses, and I'll tell you which ones. Laban leaves Jacob. Why? Because God protects Jacob. So we've seen how God protects him financially. Now he's going to protect him militarily, because a lot of this language here has military overtones through it. Even when you hear about tents and camping here in this passage, it's using military sort of language. That when the pursuit is going on by Laban, it's this same kind of language that's being used of the Egyptians chasing after the Israelites. So it's that same kind of flavor about it. But let's start at verse 22 and hear through the rest of this chapter. When it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled, he took his kinsman with him and pursued him for 7 days and followed close after him into the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." And Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen pitched tents in the hill country of Gilead. So you have this idea of this army, these warring kind of imagery there in those verses. And Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done that you have tricked me and driven away my daughters like captives of the sword? Why did you flee secretly and trick me and did not tell me so that I might have sent you away with mirth and songs and tambourine and lyre?" You know, like he did for the previous 20 years. All those parties he threw for you, Jacob, he was really going to do that. Verse 28, "And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and daughters farewell? Now you have done foolishly." You see, I've taken their money away, but I want to give them a kiss. I just want you to see how much of a hypocrite, big, fat, hairy hypocrite Laban is. Okay? Verse 29. "It is in my power to do you harm. Is that true?" He's already had a conversation with God. Okay? He is lying, guys. That's what Laban does. Okay, so it is in my power to do you harm, but, which means I'm about to do the opposite. "The God of your father spoke to me last night saying, 'Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad.'" Well, at least he told the truth there. "And now you have gone away because you longed greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?" That's the real reason. Jacob answered and said to Laban, "Because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. Anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what I have that is yours." So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two female servants, but he did not find them. And he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. Ooh, what's going to happen? Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put him in the camel's saddle and sat on them. Laban felt all about the tent, but he did not find them. And she said to her father, "Let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the way of women is upon me." Okay, guys, if you're in a Middle Eastern context, they were rolling right now. They were laughing because that's what false gods are good for. That's what Moses is saying, and just glad the kids aren't in the room. But that's what he's saying. They're that disgusting and vile. So he searched, but he did not find the household gods. Verse 36, "Then Jacob became angry and berated Laban. Jacob said to Laban, 'What is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? For you have felt through all my goods. What have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between us two. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flocks. What was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. From my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. There I was. By day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night. So here's where Jacob is saying, God has protected me. In case you didn't get the main theme of this worship service and of this sermon, it is that God protects his people, especially those who are living within the context of his covenants. Remember that, Christian, because you are in a covenant with God. He will never leave you nor forsake you. He is the perfecter and the founder of your faith. He will take care of you in every way possible. He is making all things new. Now, verse 43. Then Laban answered and said to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters. The children are my children. The flocks are my flocks. And all that you see is mine. But what can I do this day for these my daughters, or for their children whom they have borne? Now let's skip. Oh wait, no, let's do verse 44. Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. Now let's skip to verse 51, because that's where they do the covenant, and there's a name or two that I can't pronounce in there. Truth be known. Then Laban said to Jacob, see this heap and this pillar, which I have set between you and me. And they have a covenant meal. They set up rocks and pillars and they say, hey, this is the place. This is the place that you do not go past, Laban. This is the place that you do not go past, Jacob. This is a non-aggression pact. It's kind of like if you ever got in a wrestling match with one of your brothers or sisters, and you knew you couldn't beat the other brother or the other sister, and you said, okay, this is stalemate. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Or maybe it was just me who had those kind of situations. Okay, but it's that kind of situation. Have you ever had that kind of a situation where it's too painful to go on with this, but you want to make sure that both of you let go at the same time? That's what's going on here. Okay, verse 51. Then Laban said to Jacob, see this heap and this pillar, which I have set between you and me. This heap is a witness, and the pillar is a witness, that I will not pass over this heap to you, and you will not pass over this heap and this pillar to me, to do harm. The God of Jacob and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. Because he's a polytheist. He'll invoke the name of any God you want, okay? So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. And Jacob offered a sacrifice in the hill country and called his kinsmen to eat bread. They ate bread and spent the night in the hill country. Early in the morning is, how many times have we seen that in the book of Genesis? Well, Pam's not in the room. It's her favorite time of day. Early in the morning, Laban arose and kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned home. This is the word of God. Thanks be to God. So as we're looking at this last passage here, we see that Laban, he hotly pursues Jacob, who will become Israel. So he's pursuing the Israelites, quite literally, just like Pharaoh. God protects Jacob. Verse 24. Notice that the true and the living God, he invades dream. And also notice this, that Laban can't lay his hand on the gods. He can't find them anywhere. But God can find him. God invades his dream. See the irony that's meant to be there from Moses as he's writing this. Why do we need to know this passage? Why do we need to know this? Because this is the world we know, right? This is the world that wants to use you. And what does this passage want you to know? Why do we need to know this? Because the world wants to use you. What do we need to know? That God wants to protect you. What do we need to do? We need to, like Jacob, flee the world.